Hey, Changemakers. Welcome back to the best version of myself, where we have on Changemakers who are doing exactly that, living the best life day after day and continuing to improve themselves to be the best version of themselves. And today with me, I have DeLano Cain-Watson. And DeLano is the CEO and owner of Eternal Wellness Company, which specializes in holistic services, including massage therapy, Reiki, and organic body care products. DeLano also is serving on the board of directors of our nonprofit, Mindful Minutes for Schools. He is a first-generation college graduate with honors, holding a Bachelor of Science degree in aviation management from the University of Dubuque, and get this, with minors in pre-health and African American studies. What a guy. DeLano is also a licensed private pilot and advanced ground instructor. Can you tell how amazing he is already? He also completed his 300-hour teacher training under the amazing Diane Bondi, diving deeper into yoga for diversity, equity, and well-being. Prior to that, he completed his 200-hour YTT at B1 Yoga in Dubuque under the direction of May Hinchin and Chrissy Mueller. As a certified trauma support specialist and Reiki master teacher, he brings extensive expertise to his practice, emphasizing wellness and healing for the Black community. Currently pursuing a master's in public health, this guy does not rest, DeLano aims to teach in academia to foster greater awareness of wellness and yoga, particularly with underserved communities. DeLano, I am so honored to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
From the first time we had coffee, I was like, this guy is amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you said yes and you're here and that we can talk about all things yoga and mindfulness, but most importantly, your journey into the practice. So I'd love to start by just hearing who DeLano Cain-Watson is. I mean, your resume speaks for itself. But where did you come from? Who was the younger version of yourself to make you the best version of who you are today?
I'll be the best version of myself, spreading kindness and peace.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. I'm definitely super excited to finally get this started. I am originally from the south side of Chicago, and I'm really proud of that, especially considering everything that I've achieved in my kind of short 23 years on the earth already.
See, that's what's amazing. You're 23 years old, and that's your resume already. Yeah. Wow.
And so I'm from the south side of Chicago. I was a kind of output of the Chicago public school system, which is what it is. And so I'm super excited to have, I think, made it out of where I came from. And I attended school both here in Dubuque, Iowa, and in Denver, Colorado. So I've been all over, and I've had lots of experiences all over. And I knew that when college came, that being back in Dubuque is where I wanted to be. So I came to the University of Dubuque, and I did all the things there. I was in student government. I started a holistic health club there. That's where I got first introduced to yoga, and at B1, and where I grew into what I am today. And so there's a little bit.
I love that. So you talk a lot about your upbringing and your loss, and that really brought you into the practice of yoga because the modalities of yoga. So can you talk a little bit about your reasons, your why for wanting to come to a 200 yoga teacher training? And then I'd love you to expand upon it and be like, okay, this is when it wasn't enough and I wanted more, and I started my 300 before I even finished my 200. Yeah. So tell us your journey to your 200.
Yes. So coming from where I'm from, I never really saw yoga in my community, even when coming to Dubuque for the very first time. That was back in middle school, so of course I was super young. I kind of only knew yoga from what I've seen in the movies or on TV, and it's stretching, and I didn't really understand that yoga is so much more than the physical practice.
Yes.
And I remember my first yoga class was at B1, and I believe it might have been a yin class, and it was during COVID. It was in March of 2021. I checked the date yesterday. So it was March of 2021 when I first had my first yoga class. I remember it was a yin class. And at that time, it probably was still freezing cold outside, I'm sure.
Probably it's Dubuque, Iowa. Yeah.
Right. And so I remember I remember being in that class, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't understand the readings before class. I didn't really understand. I thought that, yoga was what I saw on TV, which was more of a vinyasa flow or some type of flow class. And so I didn't understand what yin was, and it like drove me nuts during I remember so it drove me nuts. But I remember afterwards I walked out of the studio. I actually had my best friend with me at the time, and we both walked out of the studio and was just like, wow, it was nice to be able to disconnect from everything going on in the world at that time for that hour. And I'm like, this is crazy that I came here, thinking that I had one idea of how this class was going to go. And then it completely, honestly changed me just that 1 hour being in the studio. And it was, I don't know if it was the LED lights in the room. I don't know if it was the incense. I don't know if it was the flow, if it was I think it was everything. Being in the room, community of people. I think at that time, most people were wearing masks at that time. And there was a lot going on. Just in the world at that time.
There sure was.
Yeah, and so to be able to disconnect for that hour was absolutely amazing. And I knew from there, I was a student at UD, and UD offered free yoga classes during the lunch hour. And this was during COVID. And I started to go to those classes like religiously, and it was wonderful. I think they were taught maybe like Tuesday and Wednesday or something. And that was like the best part of my week. I looked forward to it. And then from there, I started going to B1 more often. And it was introduced, the YTT for my cohort was introduced, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I didn't know, I felt like I didn't know anything about yoga, but I'm like, there's no better way to learn than to teach. And that's how that's actually how I study. I go in a room with a big whiteboard, and I write on the whiteboard, and I act as if I'm teaching a class. And
that's
it's
brilliant.
Like and so it's the funniest thing, and it's the weirdest thing when someone walks past the room and sees me, but talking to no one. But it helped me to learn, and I'm like, maybe this is just what I need to do at this time. And I feel like I've always been called to spaces where I don't have a lot of people who may look and sound like me. And I think that was a big part of it too, that pushed me to do the 200, because I'm like, I have gotten used to both fortunately and unfortunately kind of molding or integrating into systems to help change them. And so I know that not everybody who looks and sounds like me, or not everyone from the south side of Chicago who doesn't see themselves in a yoga studio or teaching yoga or owning a yoga studio has that kind of grit or push, because it's honestly scary when you don't have the representation. So I knew, like, I can't notice a problem and do nothing about it. And if I can even do a little bit, like teaching a class, like getting my 200 hour was something that was so powerful for me. And I love just academia in general. I love learning. I love pushing myself to get out of my comfort zone. And so being in the room with my cohort for my 200 hour was often... I found myself, it was a very positive experience overall, but I found myself always noticing how I was different than everyone else. And it was like honestly different in a good way. And I at first, before coming to yoga, and actually this has helped me to develop as a person too, yoga did, instead of noticing difference in a negative lens, I noticed difference in a positive lens. Like we are all from
that.
Yeah, and so we are all from different walks of life, different backgrounds. I believe I might have been the youngest. I know I was the only man. I was the only black person in the room too. And so seeing where everyone came from, I know that my Omi, who was and that's what we called our buddy, our partner.
Oh my gosh, your yoga buddy was called your Omi.
Yeah,
I love that.
So I know she has Filipino background. And so it was nice to understand, and a military background, but I didn't have a military background. So learning a lot about military and like yoga and what yoga does for veterans. Like
Yes.
that really pushed me to learn more. And talking with Chrissy and May about how the 200 hour is just a baseline certification, and it just gives you a teeny tiny introduction into yoga, and then you're able to graduate. You get your certification, and then you
Yes.
get your I can't remember what the name is. From Yoga Alliance.
Your certification from Yoga
Yeah,
Alliance.
your certification
Yes.
Yoga
Yes.
Alliance. And, in your continuing ed hours, it's a good chance for you to go out and like take extra classes. And I knew like I would love like going to all the things, learning about all the things. And so I remember in February of this year, actually, I was looking at 300 hours. I'm like, how do I take this to the next level? And
Next level.
yeah. And
Yes.
so I'm like, I remember the time that I made the decision to go to a 300 training is when we had our yoga philosophy module. And we had a professor come in that was a philosophy professor that did his dissertation on the Jita and yoga and the Yoga Sutras. And it was just out of this world.
Was that J-Ram?
Yes, it
Okay,
was. Yes.
okay. Yeah,
And
he's fabulous.
Yes. And so I never knew that like sitting through that lecture would really change the trajectory of yoga for me. And I knew like 300 hours dove a little bit deeper into yoga philosophy and teaching. And so with my 300 hour that I looked at was with Diane Bondi. And I actually got the recommendation from an instructor at B1, Marcy. And I was so excited when I reached out and like I looked at her website, and I knew as soon as I opened up the website, like I was enamored.
And I met her at our yoga festival that we used to have in Dubuque. And when you told me you were taking the training from her, I'm like, what a powerful match. Because she not only does it for accessibility, she also does it for body awareness,
Yes.
which I love.
Yes.
I love that so much because not everybody has to look like the skinny, tall, white woman in yoga. So
Right.
I love that.
Right.
So keep
And
going
so,
on at that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so that was, I think that was actually one of the biggest reasons is I as a Black business owner myself too, I try to reach out to other Black business owners and support as much as I can, or small businesses in general, whether it's as a Black business owner or not, or woman-owned businesses. And I feel like the experience I get from either woman-owned business or Black-owned business almost always like far outweighs what I get from just a traditional corporate-owned business. Like I could have, I was technically from Chicago. There was nothing stopping me from going to go do a 200 and a 300 at something like Yoga 6, for example.
Yeah.
That's a corporate-owned place. I didn't want to do that. I knew my 300 hour that I wanted to do it online because I was still in college. So I looked at a couple different programs. I believe I looked at maybe Yoga Renew and a couple of the other like corporate big names.
Yes.
And I just knew like, no, that's not what I wanted to do. And Diane Bondi, 300 hour, her 200 and 300 have the same kind of focus. And seeing all of the books that she had that were written by Black authors, and I am an author myself too, and just
Which isn't in your resume.
Yeah. Honestly, that's it's crazy because out of all the things that's in there, that's the one thing I always forget. It's just because I don't know. I just
You're
love,
like, yeah, I did that too.
yeah. And so, being an author myself and seeing all the books and seeing her faculty that she had, there were. The sound healing faculty member for my 300 hour was a Black gay man himself, and he was from Atlanta. And at that point, I was thinking about moving to Atlanta after college, and so this was like the perfect
Yes.
the perfect match. And getting to like know him, his name was I believe Sean J. Moore was his name, in case anybody wants to
Shout out to him.
Yeah, and so. Seeing him and seeing someone who looked and sounded like me teach not only in yoga, but to be a teacher trainer and be in a 300 hour that's meant for advanced teachers was something that was really powerful for me, and that like affirmed that this is where I need to be. I'm where I am is where I need to be and where I need to continue to be. And so that was kind of like my journey into my 300 hour. I finished that, I believe, back in August, maybe. I remember.
I know when we had coffee in like July, you hadn't quite finished, but you were almost there.
Yes.
Like you were
Yes.
almost there. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, you started that in February and you're almost done. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so I really worked, I was a college student at the same time too. So I had like the grit of like getting assignments done, getting things done. I was so used to like, I feel like, in college, like it seems like you do one quiz, one exam, and the next week you have another one in another class and another one and another one and another one.
I'm sure you're speaking to a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that could be taken and, put into like any kind of person's life. But so I had the grit to want to do it. So I found myself up late night doing, like watching my lessons and lectures and doing the homework assignments and reading. And I just absolutely loved everything about my 300.
Yeah.
And I think that's what pushed me more to get it done faster too. I think I might have finished first in my cohort. Not that like necessarily like
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
Not that like matters a whole bunch, but it really I wanted to finish in the summertime because I didn't know what my future was going to be and whatnot, and so that's one of the biggest things that pushed me to finish. And when I remember when you and I had coffee, I believe that I had done all the coursework except for the final project at that point. And my final project was right before I left Dubuque. I remember I taught down at Comiskey Park.
That's right.
yeah.
You were doing, and Comiskey Park for our listeners is in downtown Dubuque. And when doing that, you made it accessible to all.
Yes.
I mean, it was really right in the heart of Dubuque.
Yes. And so I knew, like, when I did yoga, that there were already yoga studios that were offering free yoga. I know the Y offers free yoga, but there's not really good public transportation access to
Right.
that. I knew there was free yoga offered at the Riverwalk, but there's not good necessarily public transportation offered there.
Yes.
And all the yoga studios are either west of JFK and a more economically, I guess, developed part of Dubuque. And so I knew, like, I wanted to be downtown and teaching people who looked and sounded like me, really welcoming everyone.
Yes.
But my focus, since my 300 hour was focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, well-being, and body image and so many different things. I knew that Comiskey Park was where I wanted to be. And I had so many people. I lived in the downtown area of Dubuque when I first moved here. So I'm really well connected with everyone there. And I knew that Comiskey Park was where I wanted to do my classes at because I had so many people reaching out to me, like, how do I get started in yoga? What do I do? And they were like scared to go to a studio. The same thing that I kind of experienced.
The nerves of walking into a new space. And like you said, not everybody may look or sound like them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
Powerful.
And so I knew that I wanted to help to create that space. I didn't want to come in and like have a savior complex by any means. It's just like come and move your body and listening to music. Like I always theme my classes either around music or a chakra, or it could even just be simply a color or season.
Yeah.
And so I chose all three of those classes. I themed them around a certain artist. Like I taught a Beyonce flow, and people who like that.
my gosh, a Beyonce flow.
And so it was really interesting to choose which songs I wanted to have in there and at what point, and like timing my flow with that. And so it was really interesting. And I did one about my favorite rapper, Rod Wave, who he really is changing the scene for the rap community and the Black community, and where he's rapping about not all the negative that has happened to us, but he raps a lot about mental health and talks a lot about mental health.
I think you posted that playlist.
Yes,
Because
yes.
I listened to a few of the songs because of that, because you posted it and shared it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have listened to that. So thank you for doing that. You opened my eyes.
Problem.
Yeah.
No problem. And I think, when I posted that was my intention, to hopefully have someone to even just know who the person was and know that, I think to have some type of positivity around the rap community, because I know that a lot is not that. But connecting it back to my experience in teaching those classes at Comiskey, I knew that I wanted to really specialized these classes in a way that like it drew people in, even if people weren't drawn into the yoga. Maybe it was like this one song or this one artist. Maybe Beyonce was your favorite artist, and that's why you came, not
Whatever.
because you wanted to do yoga. And I believe it was like 95 degrees all 3 days, and so it was like you got the real authentic
hot yoga experience.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting. And actually, I took that moment to actually teach about where hot yoga came from and doing yoga outside, and it's supposed to mimic the natural environment in India, and where the hot yoga came from. And it was a summer, and it was super humid. I remember outside,
Dubuque, Iowa again.
and we were like close to the river too. So I'm like, this is probably the most authentic hot yoga experience you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And so and I just wanted to just show up for my community. Whoever came, the first week, I think I had maybe 5 people. The next time I had 10. The next time I think I might have had 10 or 12 again.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so I had a few mats that I had purchased for the students, and some people bought their own mats. I'm like, honestly, just bring a towel, even if you could, or a sheet, because, not everyone has a mat or even has a car to get to Five Below or to get to anywhere to buy a mat. And so I was able to at least provide some mats for people, and it was just a time to just move your body and be in community. And that really woke me up to where I feel like I wanted to be in the yoga space and the work that I was already doing and continuing to do.
Oh, you're my hero. Like, I am going to watch you continue to become the best version of yourself. And I just can't imagine where you're going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You are going to be making big changes in this world. So
that's my goal, at least.
You're going to reach it, my friend, because I think you will set a goal and then you'll set your own bar higher, and you'll continue to hone yourself.
Definitely.
I know it. I can see
Thank
it. I don't
you.
have a crystal ball, but I can see it. So you have many, many platforms that you've shared with us that you stand on. And like you said, you don't have a God complex at all, but you want to share and build community. And I feel like you've done a wonderful job of educating yourself and others about equity in the practice of yoga. So can you share with our listener maybe your top 2 tips for making yoga accessible to all? Because when you shared with me about public transportation for free yoga, it didn't even dawn on me that that's a barrier. And so that was a huge tip for me that, when I ever go to offer free kids yoga classes, because that's really what we do at Challenge to Change. We offer it for all ages, but in our community of Dubuque, we offer a lot of free kids yoga, is making it accessible to all. So we are partnering with a downtown business to offer some yoga classes. So it is more accessible, and it is on a route where there is public transportation to make it accessible. And we do partner with like the Boys and Girls Club and St. Mark's to make it sure that we're getting it to every child that we can. And then, of course, in the schools, which makes it very accessible. But that's one tip that you gave me that has been huge for me. So do you have your top 2 tips? Like maybe outside of that, because I already gave that tip away. But that you would give for our listeners.
Yes. Yeah. So one thing that I would say, and I was thinking about this question before, is I was thinking about like, how do I even answer this question? Because it's just like,
you're like, there's
I feel
1,400.
Right. And so the one thing I would say, something as simple as like the music when you are teaching a class, and I specifically try to choose music. And it's something super simple, or at least it feels super simple to me, but I choose music that is that I can relate to, but also like music that I specifically choose music written by a lot of Black artists. And I try to reach out to, actually I was at a conference, this is so crazy, but I was at a conference and I met, it was a conference for Black pilots back in August, actually. And I met a woman who
That's right,
makes...
you're a pilot.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And so I actually met a woman who offered like a sound healing. It was the craziest thing. It was like a pop-up thing during a conference for pilots, which was like out of this world crazy. But she actually makes music for wellness spaces, or she makes almost like spa music or like earthy music. She like does sound healing and she like sells that. And so like I've been reaching out to her to like use her music and just mobilize her as like as a Black artist. And at the studio that I teach at here in Dubuque, we share playlists amongst each other. And when I share playlists, I try to be very intentional about sharing playlists of sharing music by Black artists, and not just, you know, the traditional Beyonce or Whitney Houston. I try to like share even rap music that would be good for classes like hip hop flow or so I think like choosing music, and I'm a massage therapist, and spa music actually absolutely drives me.
You're a massage therapist too. I'm sorry. I'm not poking fun of you. Again, I said you're my hero, and I can't wait to watch where you go. So continue on.
And so as a massage therapist, I remember being in massage school, and spa music absolutely drives me nuts. And so I actually, in my classes, I try not to choose like spa music like at all, except for when students enter and when students exit, where there's kind of like talking going on. I don't want like actual like voices or sounds in the background. So I let spa music play for a couple of minutes before class, a couple of minutes after class, because I know that people come to classes probably to want that too. But I specifically choose music. I was also a musician in high school and college, so I choose like choir music. I choose music that's like an actual human voice singing to you. And there's just something about sharing art that like is so special to me. And I didn't really realize how that is actually kind of showcasing how equity and how inclusion can actually be used in a yoga space with something so simple as just the music that you play. And then I would say the second way that you can really make yoga equitable is just simply to educate yourself. And I don't mean educate yourself in the way that, you know, you only look at articles or news or whatever it is that is written or put forth by people who look and sound like you. Like I purposely reach out to people who may not look and sound like me. Like I know other yoga instructors that are Latino or Hispanic or other like, you know, white instructors. And I try to get myself out of my community because I'm such like in the work of like equity and like welcoming everybody and really trying to bring everyone in, that sometimes I feel like I turn off everything else from someone who doesn't look or sound like me. And I mean, that's the exact same thing that I'm trying to get out of or trying to teach other people to not do. And so I would say that second thing that I would say that people should do to make yoga more equitable, is to educate yourself and learning, like reading books, listening to podcasts, like not only this one, but other podcasts.
Because we want to listen to you, for sure. I mean,
and so, you know, reading books, listening to music, like going to different yoga studios. When I was in Chicago, I looked at and researched different yoga studios that were Black owned, that were women owned, that were male owned. And so it was really interesting to just really bring yourself or put yourself into these spaces where people may not look or sound like you, to just simply understand. That's the best way to do it. We don't learn by sitting here having conversations with only between two yoga instructors. We learn by having community yoga classes. We learn by understanding people who don't come from the same community that we do. So yeah, I think that's another kind of that. It's more broad for sure, but I think that would be a good place to start.
I love that. And you made it very simple and accessible to anyone. So there really isn't excuses.
Right.
You know,
right.
there really isn't.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't wait to come to one of your yoga classes. And before we started the podcast, we were talking about that and where you're going to be teaching. So
super excited.
I know. Any community will be lucky to have you. I'm just grateful you're in Dubuque right now.
Yeah.
So we get to have you.
Right.
So yeah. So let's bring it to present day and talk about where you're at currently. Okay. So you have recently started your master's in public health.
Yes.
And excuse me, what college is that at again?
Yeah, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. So
okay, awesome.
It's an online program. So
okay, that's right. You did say it was online. So can you share with our listeners your journey thus far in adapting and bringing that in, and why you're doing another degree to advance yourself into being the best version of yourself? I mean, if anybody had coffee with you, which we had coffee for 2 hours, and I was like, oh no, I got to go and I don't want to.
Yeah.
But they would know that you would continue to learn and grow. And then, so on top of that too, so this is really a 2-part question, is then what are your hopes and dreams moving forward beyond the master's degree that you're getting? So number 1, bring us to full speed to where you're at right now with your master's in public health, where you hope that takes you, and then what is the future for DeLano Cain-Watson?
Yes.
And yoga and mindfulness and all the yummy things that you're doing.
Definitely. So I knew when I finished my bachelor's, my goal has always been to become Dr. Cain-Watson.
Yeah.
And so that has
A really good ring to
yeah,
it. I'm
yeah.
going to say that.
And so I know that the way that I have gone about obtaining that goal so far has been, changed a lot over the past few years and even just the past few weeks. But what landed me to make the decision to pursue my master's of public health was again, really does come back to equity, honestly. Going to the school that I did, I think we have maybe 30, 40, 50 faculty. I don't know the exact number, but I believe 3 are black and 3 are black males.
That would be accurate for Dubuque, Iowa.
Yeah. And so I know, of course, that it's not out of the blue for Dubuque. We are in Dubuque, Iowa, and I always joke and say we're in the middle of a cornfield. But
a lot of our listeners are going to Google us now, Dubuque, Iowa, population and diversity.
Right. And so representation and equity were 2 of the biggest things that really brought me to wanting to go into the field of public health. And I know that public health kind of draws in everything in healthcare and really does do a deep dive into health disparities and how, the social determinants of health and how where you live, what you eat, how all of that determines, and not only just your genetics, because health is not just your genetics. There are things that you can change and behaviors that you can change. And that is really, I think, what brought me to choosing public health over all the other fields that I could have gone into. And what I hope to, I start classes actually pretty soon. So I just applied and got accepted. So it's been something that's new and fresh in my mind. And I'm like super happy to go forward with this next step. And I was so super excited. I looked at all the classes that I'll take and like learning about like social determinants of health. And toward the end of my program, I know I'll have to do a capstone and a thesis. And I'm just really already thinking about.
You probably have that already planned
out. Actually I do.
Yeah.
and so I know like where I am now, where I see myself being in this master's and also like in the future. And of course, like after that, already wanting to do a PhD program in public health and
Dr.
looking
Cain-Watson.
and so looking at different options to be able to get that kind of I don't want to just say check that box, but in a way check that box to still be able to move forward and to not only use my expertise or my experiences personally and professionally, but just to see how that ties into yoga. And right now, I'm a massage therapist and I have my own skincare line, and those are things, and I'm an author.
Forgot to add that in there too, the skincare line creation. Oh my gosh.
And so
your resume needs updating.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I thought about that yesterday. I would say like tying all those things in together and being a yoga instructor. And like, I do know that like in the future, I kind of envision myself like growing my business into not only using my PhD to teach at a university. I would hope that would be like a full-time job, but also be able to have a wellness studio that has a yoga studio attached to it, and that is in a lower income or underserved community, and to still be able to not only offer something to someone who can afford to go to college, because not many people can afford to go to college for one, or even see that on their radar if they don't see someone who looks and sounds like them. So I feel like being a professor not only connects to communities within academia and higher education, but also having a wellness studio in a community like something where I came from is important to me too. And so being able to offer massage and being able to offer Reiki and being able to offer community yoga classes is something that is really like near and dear to my heart. And so I think that that's another space that I want to kind of insert myself into to learn about and to just share with others.
Oh my gosh. Fascinating. Yeah. Like I'm already like looking forward 10 years from now, and I can see where you're going to be and all you're going to do and all the humans, no matter what creed you're going to affect.
Thank you.
Keep going. I'm going to be one of your biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah. Thank you. That's my goal.
And, that's selfishly why I was like, DeLano, do you want to be on our board of directors for Mindful Minutes of School and help bring that accessibility to our nonprofit side of things in Dubuque? Because, selfishly, I'm like, I want a piece of the magic, like of what you can do. I mean, it's not just good for me.
Yeah.
It's good for a total community. And that's what
Thank you.
your biggest platform is building community.
Yeah.
So
that's my goal, to
Yes.
always kind of build community in whatever way I can do that. And when I was offered that chance to be on the board, I'm like, absolutely, because it's something like I envision myself doing in the future. And that's like the work that not only my personal experiences, but also like professionally and academically, that's what my degree will prepare me to do as well.
Yes.
And so I think it just kind of sets me up and gives me these chances at an earlier step. And I can only imagine like what I can do in the future more intensively that I've had these experiences from such a young age too. So
fantastic. And you're only 23.
yeah.
And you have a skincare line.
Yeah.
You know what? You could be like a flying yoga teacher and do like facials and
Yeah.
massage all at once.
Yeah.
That could be like a new business for you.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because I know my family, when I was, whenever I'm back home in Chicago for like Thanksgiving or Christmas, they always joke about like I'm like a flying doctor that does massages and writes books. And it's like so funny because they never know like what's coming next almost. And because I always feel like I have something that I'm working on that like I'm like not sharing or something. And
But the thing, DeLano, you finish everything, and if you don't finish, you pivot and start something new. And that I really admire about you, because a lot of 23-year-olds would just give up and, surrender, and you pivot and you find a new place for yourself. And you are very, very good at using your inner moral compass for that. So
yeah, thank you.
kudos.
I'm definitely excited that and happy that and grateful that I have had so many experiences in life that I feel like were setbacks in a way, but I used that experience and I used the trauma from that experience to still push forward and to still see, I don't want to say see the good in things, because some of the things I experienced in life, like losing my mom at a young age, like there's no way to see the experience of things with that. It feels like as much as we can say, look on the bright side of things, it's it's like I lost my mom there. Like it's beyond looking on the bright side of things. I think, but still pushing beyond, or just finding the good amongst the bad, or finding one positive thing about today. Like, even if nothing else went well in your day, you woke up today and you're breathing.
Yes.
And there are people who didn't wake up today. There are people who don't have two legs to get up and walk out of their room and to walk into the world and to show up. And every day I show up in the world like I'm DeLano Cain-Watson, and these are all the scrapes and scratches and trauma and happy and sad and pros and cons, and this is me. You get who I am, and all I can do is just still go forth and just learn more just about life every day. And I mean, I'm so young still, and I've been able to achieve so much, and I think really it's just because, just like you said, like I keep pushing forward, and I always try to find a way to move forward. Like everything in life, like yes, things happen in the past. History is history for a reason, but looking at like everything in history shapes the future and shapes the present and shapes the future. And so I think like using everything that I've been through, I know that there are people who look and sound like me, or people who may not look and sound like me, that have gone through some traumatic experiences too. And my thing is like I never saw anybody who I felt like I could be that were role models for me, I would say, growing up and where I was on the south side of Chicago. And so I think like I know firsthand what that is like to not see someone succeed, or to see someone fall through the cracks. And I'm like, even from a young age, I'm like, this is not where I want to be for the rest of my life. I remember I was in third grade in the Chicago public school system. I'm like, this is not where I want to be. And even from that young age, it just seems like as a kid, like I always knew that I wanted to grow more, but not just grow away from the people that I came from, but grow out from that to gain not only more certifications and degrees, et cetera, training, but just gain some experiences that I don't get on the south side of Chicago to go back and to help people who may not be able to feel like they can make it out. Someone who may feel like that, college is unattainable, or going to a yoga class. Like,
Yes.
I won't allow someone else who looks or sounds like me to not go into a yoga studio because they don't see someone like them, or they don't understand the music. They don't understand what the poses are. I went to a yoga studio downtown Chicago, which is kind of somewhat off topic, but it kind of still connects it to the work that I'm doing. I remember going to the class, and this was when I was in YT and my 200, and we were learning all the Sanskrit names for all the poses, and the teacher used Sanskrit names for every single pose.
Every pose in the class? Wow.
And in the class, and it was interesting because this was a class. I believe the other students in the class were already yoga teachers, and and I, of course, was studying to be one. But I couldn't imagine if someone who was from the south side of Chicago, like I was, who would come into that studio and not understand enough about yoga in its English form,
right?
let alone in the Sanskrit names, and just have a positive experience. And I don't want that for other people. So like sometimes when I teach, I try to teach with, and I think that this may come forward later in the podcast too, but I try to teach and give like the English names and also throw in the Sanskrit names, because I feel like we honor the culture a lot better when we do that, and not steal or gentrify Indian culture by any means, and where yoga came from. And I would not be that yoga teacher that Americanizes or westernizes yoga and only uses it for its physical practice and not its mental, emotional practice, which is really where yoga. Yep.
The 8 limbs.
Yep.
You got to include all of them.
Yep.
Thank you for saying that, because I think that is so important. I mean, I throw in Sanskrit sometimes, but all the practices of yoga are really important to me. My favorite, if I'd have to pick one of them, is the meditation piece, to be quite honest. I love breath work. I love the pranayama. I love the asana, but really for me, the meditation, because that's when we turn inward and really truly connect to self and source. Right?
And it's a time to just really kind of shut off the world and really just focus on you for this hour that we're in this room. Most of the time it's an hour, 90 minutes, etc. And especially I like that the meditation part of yoga is sometimes like the shortest part of the class, but the most meaningful part of the class. I think it's a good kind of metaphor for life almost, where it's always the little moments. It's always the little things in life that really makes us greater. And like the little things that happen in my life, like moving away from Chicago to Dubuque and then Dubuque to Denver, and seeing how, those weren't little by any means, but seeing how the people that I met in all of these places have made a lasting impact on my life. And it connects to yoga just so well for me. And I think just being a yoga instructor and being able to share that with other people is something that's so important to me.
Yeah. Okay, we're to the time. Seriously, if I could have a 2-hour podcast, that's the people who are on my staff were here earlier, and they joked that we could have a part 2 with you, because I'm like, DeLano and I could go on and on and on. She's like, maybe you need to make it 2 parts, but unfortunately, I'm not going to do that. So I want to ask you what I ask everyone who comes on the best version of myself, which are the core 4 questions. And I know you've done a lot of work in social emotional learning and in personal empowerment. And Dr. Liza Johnson was one of our previous guests on this podcast who has helped bring that work forward for me. And her work has been really, the work she does with 6 Seconds has really impacted what we do at Challenge to Change now. So we have all of our staff members, all of our, people we work with really understand their core values and help them to come to understand that, because our core values are what make us tick. They help us understand, like, when we get really upset about something, why? It's probably because one of our core values were rocked, And so, DeLano, my first question of the core 4 for you is, what are your top 3 core values?
Yeah, so I would say My number one core value is honestly just courage.
Ooh, I love that. No one has said that yet.
Yes,
Courage.
and so
okay.
courage, and I say adaptability,
Yes.
and courage, adaptability, and just forward motion.
I
Forward
like
moving or just motion. And it's like life doesn't stop because one simple thing happened. Life doesn't stop because my mom passed at a young age. Life doesn't stop because, I moved all around. Life doesn't stop because all of these things happen in my life. I have to just keep going. I can choose to keep going and complain or keep going and change. One of the two.
DeLano, I love that. We have what we call core value cards at Challenge to Change that we work with our MCP coaches and, educators. We have them figure out their top 3 core values by using our core value cards. And I want to add in forward motion to our cards. I love that because life does not stop. I shared over coffee my loss as well of losing, the love of my life very young and being widowed with 3 kids under the age of 3. And again, life doesn't stop. And I would say, that's where the grit comes in. And when you were talking about grit earlier, I'm like, grit is you. You are grit. Like grit DeLano grit Cain-Watson.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I think that just pushes me, and things that I really use as a core value, just I think forward motion, and that doesn't always mean being positive in every single moment. Sometimes being positive, if I think about this all the time. I have a strong connection to my biological dad. If my biological dad passed away, which he is getting of kind of that age, I don't know what I would do besides learn how to move forward. And you don't have to learn how to move forward and forget everything that happened in the past. And it could be forward motion could be you taking a rest day. Forward motion can be you not going, taking a sick day from work to simply be home, or to have time with your family, or to just simply go out for a meal on your own, or simply do things that empowers you. And that still is forward motion, because forward motion doesn't mean always moving with the current. Sometimes it means fighting back against the current. Sometimes it means just floating and letting the current push you wherever it goes. And so I think that forward motion can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people and different experiences.
And I think we talked about this when we had coffee, but Susan Kubler-Ross in her stages of grief, Daniel Kessler a few years ago, with Susan Kubler-Ross's family's permission, added to her stages of grief in that last stage that kind of breaks the cycle, breaks the wheel of the stages of grief, is finding meaning, finding meaning in life. And that is forward motion.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm adding that to the cards. Okay, so the second question of the core 4 is, what is your noble goal? Because we have all of our staff members, all of our change makers, and we encourage every listener to hone their noble goal. And their core values are part of their noble goal. They help you write, but that noble goal, again, is something that points outward, that gets you out of bed every morning. It's something that you can align every decision you make in your life to. So if it doesn't align to your noble goal, it's a no. Like traveling in Chicago cold winters, that's a no. No, that's not a core, that's not my part of my noble goal. That's not a core value. But what is DeLano Grit Cain-Watson's? Oh, I messed it up because I added your middle name in there. What's your noble goal?
I'd say that my noble goal is finding the courage to keep pushing forward for other people, even if not for yourself, for other people. So finding courage to keep pushing forward for your community is what I would say that my noble goal is. And
it's beautiful.
And that can, you are part of your community. There are not just your circle, your immediate community or your immediate family, but, just really everyone finding the courage to move forward in school, in your work life, in your community, just finding ways to always look forward and not allowing, I think, yourself to succumb to the turmoil that I guess can come with trauma, but seeing how your trauma can actually push you and how your trauma can actually influence others to make change in their life, or just honestly just. Yeah, it's hard to to put to words because I feel like it's so grand, but also like so
Sometimes
small
how
too.
I put it, and if this doesn't, land for you, please correct me, but it's not becoming a victim of your trauma, but instead use it as inspiration.
Yes.
And I know that may sound somewhat harsh or too edgy for people who have recently experienced a trauma, but it is over time a way to possibly look at it.
Yeah.
So.
And I know when we talked over coffee, I think that one thing I said, like, you can either complain and change or
Yes.
complain and stay there or something along those lines.
Whatever it was, I was
And
like writing it down.
Yeah. and so that's kind of my, I think, push forward in life too. It's just finding a way to remove the victim mindset, and like, life doesn't happen to you, life happens with you. And so learning that, like, you're a part of life, life goes on, and for lack of better terms, stuff happens. I could use other language, but stuff happens, and all you can do is just keep pushing forward.
I have heard life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, but I love it happens with you. Thank you for giving me that today.
Yeah.
I love that. That's my takeaway today. Well, I have many takeaways from you today. So the next one, and I think I might have an idea of this, but I want you to share it for our listeners because you talked about growing up in the South Side of Chicago, not having many people who would inspire you or someone you could look up to. So I'd love for you to share your listeners, because I know through your journey of moving to Dubuque, moving to Denver, Colorado, back to Dubuque, working and with your family in the South Side of Chicago, you have come to find people who are inspirations to you. So can you share with us maybe one person who you would say it has inspired you to continue to be the best version of yourself?
I would say, honestly, the best person, and I was thinking about this too, would be Jessamine Stanley.
Okay, I didn't get that, but I will share more now because I'm going to learn more too now.
Yes.
Good.
And so the reason why is because I have her on Facebook, Instagram, everything you can, every social media account that you could think of. I got to meet her in person.
Wow.
I believe back in March, actually, in Madison. And I just love how she is authentically herself in every which way. And the yoga community is very as open and as widely accepting as we are. Some of the things that I know that she posts or some of the things that she does is not widely accepted within the yoga community or just within the greater society. But I like how she still keeps pushing forward. She's always her authentic self, always finding a way to not only expose her students to yoga, but just go on there and simply talk about her life. Like when she was in Madison, she made a video about all the coffee shops that she had gone to and all the restaurants. And it's like little things like that to show someone that, like, you're a human, but you also make mistakes, but you also are just simply yourself, and you show up unapologetically in every space. And I know, like, her book Yoke, I think, was the one thing that really drew me into her. And I know, like, earlier in the podcast, I mentioned, like, there is something, like, I feel like I'm always working on something or always have something up my sleeve that I, like, hadn't shared yet. But, like, I'm working on a book right now. And
really?
Yeah.
Weird.
And so it's somewhat going to be modeled somewhat after a lot of the books in the yoga world, but also after Yoke, after Jessamine Stanley, where it's really diving deep into all the nitty gritty things about yoga that we just simply, and a lot of what our conversation was about today too, that doesn't get brought forth to the limelight in yoga a lot when we're talking about it. Like, let's dive deep into yoga teacher trainings and the books that we have in yoga teacher trainings. Let's look at the people we have on our faculty in yoga teacher training. Let's look at the staff we have in our yoga studios. So things like that. And so I think that, Jessamine is one person that I look up to a lot. And she has done so much, I think, for the yoga community to just bring us outside of our box that we often put ourselves in and choose not to get out of. So I think Jessamine is definitely my hero. So.
And I know the book Yoke spoke to you on so many levels. And so I love hearing that you're working on something that will continue to inspire. So her gift is going to be the gift that you give to so many others.
Definitely.
The gift that she gave to you.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question for you, unfortunately, is, and I ask all my listeners this, how are you going to walk away from this recording of this podcast and continue to make the world around you better than you found it? At Challenge to Change, we tell all our young yogis, make the world around you better than you found it. You know, the next generation is going to need, you know, your love and support that from today. So how are you going to continue to move forward from today, from this very moment? Maybe it's just you going home and cleaning up your apartment. I don't know.
Yeah.
But how are you going to leave this and make the world around you better than you found it?
Yeah, so I would say, honestly, not only to continue the work that I'm doing, but to not give in to society sometimes, to not give in to what someone tells me that I should be like because of where I came from, not to give in to people who don't understand where I came from and who I think try to shoot me down or shoot down the work that I do. And I think just pushing forward and say, hey, I'm DeLano Cain-Watson from the South Side of Chicago, and I'm here, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I feel like that. And so I feel like showing up in spaces as myself, just like Jessamine kind of showed me, and I can show other people that, like even my nieces and nephews, like I mentor a lot of them. A lot of my nieces and nephews becoming the age that they're going to college now. And I'm like, okay, this is what, you know, how I experience life. This is things that, these are things that I feel like set me back in college. And these are ways that I could have advocated for myself. So I think advocating for myself amongst the adversity. So.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that could be like a bumper sticker, you know, a little bit long, but I love that. DeLano, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, but I want to let the listeners know where they can reach you and how they can follow you or communicate with you or send you an email, or how can they reach you?
Yes. So I do have a website, eternalwellness.com, and that's ETERNAU wellness.com, that you can kind of see everything that I'm doing professionally. I have my bio on there, my books, my yoga classes, and just everything I'm doing with massage and Reiki. So my website is definitely where you can find the most
top of like everything else you do, you manage your own website.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I'm too much, I feel like sometimes of a control freak. So like I like to have things look the exact way that I want them done. And so it's sometimes hard to let someone else do that. But
awesome. Well, thank you so much for saying yes to being here, and for saying yes to all that you do, and for helping to change the world. You are a true change maker.
Thank you for having me. I'm definitely was super excited to be able to share my experiences and to just have organic conversations. So
thanks, DeLano.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll be the best version of myself, spreading kindness and peace. I'll be the best version of myself.